So what you might call your first impressions ends up becoming a first interpretation. So there's a difference between first impression. The first impression you get is raw data. The moment you get raw data, you are trained by your school system to start interpreting based on the past. That's what the Zen master said. If you look at a rose, say it is a rose, and a rose is a rose, is a rose, is a rose, is a rose. Why 5 times the same thing? Because the first time you see, it becomes an interpretation already. I've seen so many roses in my life, so what is new about this rose? So it must be like every other rose. You observe a little bit more. No, this is the fragrance is different. I've never had this fragrance before. So then say a rose is a rose. And then again, you get lost in, I've seen here, I've smelled this fragrance before. So what is new? So again, you observe, you say a rose is a rose. So you sharpen your observation until you come to a first principle where there is nothing between the observer and the thing observed. That's where learning is. When there is no interpretation between the impression and the expression of that impression in words, when there is no interpretation, observation is at its purest. That is what we are losing.
Wonderful. And I think you also, you've written a book called The Invincible Arjuna earlier, and now you've written a book of Krishna, The Seventh Sense. I'd love to understand from you on the interpretation of failure when you are talking it from an Indian mythology or from a Krishna perspective. How would that be and what would that be?
You see, from the perspective of Krishna and Arjuna, starting with Krishna, you have to understand that here is a man whose primary orientation to living is acceptance of what is. So if you look at the hardships that this one man goes through, first of all, loses his own parents. He's brought up by foster parents. He falls in love with somebody, and then he has to move out from a pastoral village to the city of Mathura. And there on the way, he encounters so many demons on the way. He sort of kills Kamsa, and his life is a bizarre, and then he becomes king. He's supposed to be a king, but he abandons the throne and he goes to Gujarat to start an empire. And then he loses his entire Yadava dynasty. In between, he elopes with a woman. He becomes a teacher in the middle of the war of Kurukshetra. And what has he not done, you tell me? And so the fundamental way to describe Krishna is that how do you deal with the challenges of life? Your first principle is you accept what reality is rather than cribbing about it. And then you go about the business of using your intelligence to go around the problem. Very often Krishna is described as Jala Purusha. Jala Purusha means he's like the river. So when water encounters a barrier on its path, the water moves around the barrier. It doesn't collide with the barrier. So if you look at the intelligence that Krishna is bestowed with, he is bestowed with an ability to move around mental barriers, mental models. Arjuna is stuck in the middle of the Kurukshetra. His mental model doesn't help him anymore. And how does he get unstuck is the entire story of the Gita. How do you get unstuck? So Krishna moves him and says, look, just as there are protons and neutrons in the universe, in the human universe, there are also morons. Duryodhana is a moron. He has violated the law of the land. He has teased women. He has grabbed your land. And he should be punished by virtue of the karma that he's done. There's a moral and legal code of conduct. So he's broken those codes. So he has already punished himself by virtue of the action. You are only a nimitta. You are only a conduit for meeting out the punishment. If you don't do your job, you're failing in your duty. So he brings a very important word called dharma. What is dharma? It is the most flexible notion that India has for the world. It's not rule of law in the conventional sense that the Britishers or the Western world uses. Dharma means that which holds together things. So if the principles behind dharma is violated, if Duryodhana has violated those basic principles, then the dharma doesn't hold for him. Like Karna killed Abhimanyu in the battle, Arjuna's son in the battle. And Arjuna is hesitant to kill Karna because he's trying to lift the wheel of his chariot. And he says, I can't hit an enemy behind his back. That's not the dharma of war in those times. Krishna says, look what Karna has already done by killing your own son, unarmed son, in a butcherly, like a butcher. He did not follow any dharma. He just, did what was expedient. If you don't shoot now, he will turn around and kill you. So it's best in terms of, so his interpretation of dharma for Arjun is very different from what Yudhishthira would have done for Arjun. So the greatest thing that Krishna's thing is his intelligence is very fluid. It is able to grasp a problem and go around it, solve it. And he's done so many things in his life. Look at the extraordinary amount and the richness of whatever he has achieved. And that richness is something that makes him what you might describe as Purna Purush, the complete man. I used to see a Raymond's advertisement that says, the complete man. Here is an example of the complete man. The urge to complete ourselves. That's why Arjuna and Krishna are so relevant to our times, because our greatest angst, the greatest is anxiety, is to complete ourselves, and we find ourselves incomplete as human beings. That is the primary driver of the word failure. So I am incomplete. What will I need to complete myself? To go out there and do something, right? But you don't realize that the sense of completion is already hiding behind your incompleteness. So you have to discover that complete human being that you already are. And unfortunately, our journey is in the wrong side. And I'll end with a quote from Kabir, the mystical poet, seer. Kabir says, he's talking about a musk deer that is running around in the forest because it has smelled the fragrance of musk, which is very intense. And it is running around the whole forest in search of the source of the fragrance, not knowing that the musk is hidden right inside its navel. And Kabir says, "Now mein hai kasturi, kaise bharam mite pashu kare." The navel is right inside the navel. The musk is right inside your navel, but you're running around in the whole forest in search of it. This is your bharam. This is your illusion that my completion will come from more achievement. Well, it will not come from more achievement. It will come from more realization of who you are. In that process, achievement becomes a factor, but it is not the goal of life. And the successes that you're chasing out there are simply a means for you to actualize yourself. Once you do not understand that phenomena, then the successes become very outbound, and therefore they become non-fulfilling, because everything that is outbound is not going to fulfill what is inside you. So you have to understand what are those elements that fulfill you as a person, and your actions must go in tandem with that. That's why the Gita says, Sadharme nidhanansya, which means even if you die, fulfilling yourself, that death is welcome, because you are dying a fulfilled person. Right? So that's where
I think this is very interesting, and the way you talked about the musk deer, I think that is amazing to see that, okay, it's all lies within us, but we're not able to see. I'd also like to ask you a little bit around, I mean, you've written so many books, I think 17, 18 books, and I think single author of maybe 8, 9 books now. And also you have been the director of I Am Koi Code for such a long time, and earlier also you've done pretty well for yourself. But you must have faced a lot of failures in your life, a lot of things that may not have worked the way you would have wanted it. So how did you deal with that failure, and what was your response, and how did that change you as a person?
Well, I experienced not just failure, I experienced the consequence of failure, which is being sad about it, feeling bad about not succeeding. I went through the whole gamut of trying, failing, feeling bad, and then recovering. And so the thing is, the entire cycle, if I saw the entire cycle, then I realized that, the desire behind the attempt and the expectation that was born out of desire. When these expectations were not met, that is where the sense of failure at the emotional level and the physical level dawned on you. So the sense of failure was not based on your effort. It was not based on the process through which you were going. It was based on only the element of expectation. So I said, well, can there be a mechanism through which I can minimize my expectation based on what my effort? So I recognize that there's an equation in life. The equation is called, if I do this, then I should get that. If you could do then, this formula. Now, if I work hard, I'll get a promotion and an increment and a foreign posting. Now, if I work hard is in my control. Foreign posting promotion is my domain of my boss. He may or he may not. So there is no direct correlation between my effort and my results. There is always a mediated relationship. And who mediates that? Things beyond my control. So I can only put my effort in the, so if I say, only if my boss had broken bones to this morning, I would not have to present. Now, this equation will never work because my boss's broken bones is a faction of his own idiocy. He's meeting with an accident. None of this is in my control. So if I project a reality of expectation, which is not real at all, then I will suffer the consequence of my illusions being challenged by reality, right? So if I've made expectations and if I'm a hostage to my expectations, the experience of failure is inevitable.